we're going to be starting a fun series. I was talking to Anthony and Alan about what we need to be doing on Wednesday nights, and they suggested we do a spiritual gifts series. And I think that's a great series. My dad actually, he has written curriculum for college level classes on spiritual gifts. And so they said that. I sent a text to my dad and said, can you send me your material? And so I've been using that for my study as well. I want to start with a few things. You guys have a spiritual gifts test. I was handing those out. You guys can be filling them out as we go. There is a few things that you should know about it. The first is when you go to add up your scores, there are certain ones that are crossed off. The test that I downloaded is one that is more maximal in their beliefs of spiritual gifts. I'm more minimalist, and we're just going to be covering the 7 that are found out of Romans. And so I crossed off all the ones that aren't that, so don't add those up, just add up the ones that are in the ones that aren't crossed out. Second, I'd encourage you not to be 100% certain that your spiritual gift is the test you're taking. A test does not tell you what your spiritual gift is. The best place to actually find out what your spiritual gift is in the context of the local body. And so we can just tell how someone serves what their spiritual gift tends to be. We can find out how they live their life, how they do certain things, how they react to things and think about things, reveals their spiritual gifts. So a test is just a helpful guide to get there. The next thing on the test is also, if you find that you've scored, it just seems like you've scored low on all of them, come talk to me. And it could be that this test, because it's more, there could be some other things, and I'll talk through with you on that. And we'll, you have a spiritual gift, even if the test doesn't seem like it says you have one. And we'll discuss today why that is. And so don't put all your trust in it, but the test is helpful, so feel free to fill it out as we go. So first, what needs to be defined is what a spiritual gift is. A spiritual gift is a spiritual ability and skill given by the Holy Spirit to each Christian, enabling Christians to function with ease and effectiveness for the glory of God. So you have been given a gift by God that through it you can, with ease and effectiveness, serve the Lord. Those two words are very important. Ease and effectiveness. What we see in the Romans 12 when it talks about this is we've all been given a gift to use. Now, what we're going to see is that all the spiritual gifts are actually something that to some extent we all need to do. We all need to be able to administrate to some extent. But we might not be able to do that with ease and effectiveness. And so what we're going to find is a spiritual gift is something specific to that. Now, we also need to know what a spiritual gift is not. A spiritual gift is not a generic talent. So, we have wonderful musicians here. I love how we have so many great musicians here. Music is not a spiritual gift. It is a talent. It is God blessed in a lot of ways, but it is not a spiritual gift. It is not a spiritual gift to be good at your secular job necessarily. It's not a spiritual gift to be able to do really a whole sort of things. Any talent that you have, woodworking, all that, those aren't spiritual gifts. Those talents are good and should all be used for the glory of God, but they're not spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts are something different. A spiritual gift is also not a personality type. You are going to find that there is a aspect of spiritual gifts that ends up into the realm of, if you have X personality, this means you have that spiritual gift. Example of this is mercy. So immediately, if you think someone who has a spiritual gift of mercy, you probably would start thinking about the really gentle and kind grandmother. She always has candy. She's always there. And that's the kind of the concept of mercy that we think. But mercy can show up in multiple ways. Mercy can actually show up in a spiritual gift of someone who you might think they are a very frank and almost abrasive person at times. Because a spiritual gift is not about your personality. It's a gifting to be able to do something for the glory of God with ease and effectiveness. So don't pigeonhole yourself or other people into saying, well, you can't possibly have that spiritual gift if you would have this personality. No, that's not how it works. We're all still very unique people, and the way our spiritual gifts are expressed are different. Then, a spiritual gift is also not a rigid guide for ministry. Something that I've seen that becomes a little bit sad is someone will find out their spiritual gift, and the only way they ever serve in the church is if that spiritual gift is what they can do. So, the person who has the spiritual gift of giving, what they'll do is, well, the only way I'm going to do anything is I'm just going to give to it. So, you have a mission trip, I'm going to give to it. I'm not going to go on the mission trip. You're doing a conference, I'm going to give to it, I won't show up to it. All this, it's not rigid like that. A spiritual gift is something that we can do with ease and effectiveness, but it's not the only thing we do. You're going to find in the 7 spiritual gifts, they're actually pretty broad of how you can use them. You can use them in multiple different ways, and that's because that's what the church needs. My dad pointed out something, that all spiritual gifts are connected to the one another's in Scripture. And so you have different things of where Scripture tells us how we are to interact with one another. Well, the spiritual gifts accomplish many of those one another's. And so it shows up there, but we're still responsible for the other things. So in that as well, we find you might have the spiritual gift of prophecy, and we'll talk about what that means and how we believe in prophecy, not as the charismatics do, but in a biblical way. And you may be really good at, you call out sin and you call sin for what it is. But then you might go, well, that means I don't have to show mercy. No, we're still required to show mercy. Even if you don't have the spiritual gift of mercy, you still are called by God to show mercy. So it's not a rigid guide. Then we need to understand what spiritual gifts are for. I'm going to pause briefly and move back up into these 2 things of just definition of spiritual gift. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right. Spiritual gifts are first for service, going to use a very key word here, alone. You are using your spiritual gift wrong and sinfully, and I would say you're at risk of God taking it away from you if you're doing it for selfish gain. So, you have the spiritual gift of giving. And so what you do is you give. Well, you eventually start feeling a little full of yourself, and you start going, well, I'm going to give very publicly so people can see that I'm giving. Well, God might take that gift away from you because you are misusing it. And all of a sudden, the effectiveness you had in giving, the ease of it, is going to be taken away because you're using it for selfish gain. Every time spiritual gifts are mentioned, we see different kinds of spiritual gifts in different places. We're focusing in on the Roman spiritual gifts, but even when you look at the 1 Corinthians 12 conversation on spiritual gifts, even when you look at 1 Peter's conversation on spiritual gifts, you see that it is for service. I would go further and actually say it's for service in the local church. Now, there's definitely times when you see spiritual gifts going to be used outside of the local gathering, but we see these spiritual gifts primarily used inside. We're using it to serve one another, to love one another, to help one another, to admonish one another, to lead one another. All those things, we are using our gifts for each other in the church. Then spiritual gifts also are able to be grown and strengthened. So if you look at the list of spiritual gifts, and you really can look at the broader list of spiritual gifts from the ones in Romans 12, but also the ones that we see that aren't promised to all believers in 1 Corinthians 12 and other places, what we see is that all of them can also just be a secular talent. So, administration. Well, there are people who aren't saved that are very talented in administration, and they learned and grew in it. For the believer, our spiritual gifts, while they aren't a generic talent, we can become better at them. So you might have the spiritual gift of administration. You do it with ease and effectiveness. You can still become better at it. You can still learn how to do it more. You can still be able to continue to grow and excel in it. You can become better at showing mercy. You can become better at giving. All these things we can grow in. It's not we're given this gift and that's it for the rest of our life. It is, no, we can grow in it. That also means that we can weaken in it. There's a little bit of a use it or lose it aspect of spiritual gifts. If you're not using your spiritual gift, it will become so weak that you won't know how to use it. Giving's a good example of this. You have the spiritual gift of giving. If you stop giving for a while, it's going to become difficult to start giving again. And you have to strengthen yourself to be able to fulfill what your spiritual gift is. And then you also can have multiple spiritual gifts. Now, there is a limit. No one has all the spiritual gifts. And typically the spiritual gifts that you have are complementary. So my spiritual gifts are exhortation and prophecy primarily. Those two gifts kind of go hand in hand. I am good at calling out and saying this is what is right. That's the prophecy gift. And then I also want to walk beside people and walking in what is right. That's exhortation. Those things go together. The triangle for most pastors, this is all, and also a pastor does not have to have specific spiritual gifts. They can have any of them. But the typical pastor triangle spiritual gifts is exhortation, prophecy, teaching. Those are typically what you find in a preacher, sometimes as well in that you might have an administration in there. And you have those and they all work together. So you might have two. You could have three. I would say three is probably your max. You more than likely just have one or two. And then with that, those spiritual gifts could change. If you have one primary, the Lord might give you a second one for the good of the church at the time. So we need all 7 spiritual gifts in rain shells. We need every single one of them. If we are missing one, the Lord, being good to the church, is going to give someone the spiritual gift we're lacking. If we have an abundance of people who are good at exhortation, the Lord's going to make sure that we also have people who their spiritual gift is mercy. And the Lord's going to ensure that. So you might go through your life and you go, this has been my spiritual gift. I know what my spiritual gift is. And then all of a sudden you feel like, man, this thing that I never thought was my spiritual gift, I now have ease and effectiveness with. Well, that's because the Lord has gifted you because there was a need present for it. And so there could be some movement in your spiritual gifts. This is also why I would caution you with the test of making sure you don't become locked solid into the test, but rather you use the test as a tool to understand how the Lord is working in you now, but allowing the local body to recognize things that could be different, and that could be the case. You might see that, especially right now, we're in a revitalization growing process, and we might need more people. You might never thought I have the gift of teaching, and we may find out we need more Sunday school teachers. And we're going to come and say, hey, we just recognize that the Lord has gifted you in teaching. And you might go, you sure? And we're going to go, yeah, we're sure. And you're going to then go, all right, then I guess I need to fulfill what the Lord has for me in that. So those are the things of what spiritual gifts are. Do those things make sense? Any questions there? All right. Now, the next is all spiritual gifts are necessary. So we do have a problem that I think happens a lot, and this can happen unknowingly and sometimes purposefully. I have a personal story of, I told someone that I believe my spiritual gift was prophecy, and I explained exactly what that meant. I don't think that I can tell the future. I believe that just means that I can recognize, call out right and wrong, and that comes out of preaching. And I told someone that, and they really went, I just don't see, their thought was, I don't see a use for that. And actually, they said they don't like people with that spiritual gift. And that's because we tend to think of spiritual gifts in terms of personality tests. People do that all the time with the Enneagram and things like that. Well, I don't like that personality type. People do the same thing with spiritual gifts. We need all of them. And so my gift of exhortation typically looks like I want to get you going. And so if you come to me and you're coming, I'll listen to you, I'll encourage you, and then I'm going to go, here's what Scripture says, let's move forward and do this. Let me help you through that. And I might be frustrated with the person with the gift of mercy who comes in and is there and just sits with the person for a while and just goes, reminds them that they're accepted in love. I'm going, we need to get going. Let's move on. Let's take this problem and move forward. And the person with mercy is going, no, this person needs to be loved on longer. Well, for me, I might get frustrated at the mercy person. The mercy person might get frustrated at me, and we need to recognize we need each other. All of them are necessary, and all of them are necessary for the good of the church. Trust me, you do not want to live in a church when there's no one who has the spiritual gift of mercy. You'll get beat up every week. You do not want to live in a church that only has the spiritual gift of mercy. We never talk about sin. We never talk about what holiness is. You don't want to live in a church where no one has a spiritual gift of giving. We'd run out of finances pretty quickly because the people who have the spiritual gift of giving are usually the ones who give above and beyond the tithe. We need each other for the good of church. We need it for evangelism. Your spiritual gift is actually built to be able to evangelize. The prophet, the one with the gift of prophecy, is good at the evangelism where you call out sin boldly. The person with the spiritual gift of exhortation is very good at being able to show someone that their life is better with Christ. The person whose spiritual gift is giving is very quick to buy someone a meal to sit down with them. This person with the spiritual gift of mercy can recognize the person who may be down on their luck and they just need some love. All of these things we can use for evangelism. All the spiritual gifts are necessary for it, and it's very helpful. All the spiritual gifts are necessary for discipleship, just in the same way of how the church needs it. We need to be grown up. We need all of these people around and to help each other. All the spiritual gifts are from Jesus. It's very important also to know our spiritual gifts come from the Lord. He has given them to us. He has given them to us for a purpose and a reason for us to use them. And with that, we answer to Him for it. If you think of the parable of the talents, Your spiritual gift is one of the talents that God has given you. And if you do not use it, if you do not invest it, if you're not about the kingdom work with it, you have to answer to him for it. Not to Pastor Klayton, not to Range Hills, to Jesus. And then, as I mentioned before, all the spiritual gifts are necessary in the regard of being able to do the one another's to each other. Being able, there's a long list, I can't remember all the one another's. My dad would be disappointed in me, I'm supposed to have that memorized. The one another's, there's this list from Scripture of all the different things where it says, blank one another, love one another, serve one another, submit to one another, gather together, that's in the realm of one another. All these things we do through spiritual gifts. Then, spiritual gifts also must be done in love. A spiritual gift not done with love is a clanging cymbal. That's Paul's entire point in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is supreme. We do our spiritual gifts out of love for one another. So then, further with spiritual gifts, don't just know your gift, know everyone's, so that you know how to work together. The spiritual gifting of a church is kind of like a baseball team. When we're out in the field, I might be playing first base. I need to know more than just what's happening at first base. I have to know what's going on everywhere else. Knowing other people's spiritual giftings helps us work together. It also helps us understand each other. So you're doing a test right now, and you're going to come out, you're going to know yours, and you're going to just wait for me to teach on your week, because that's how we're going to do it. We're going to do a spiritual gift every week. Next week, we're going to cover all of them. Then Chick-fil-A. Then after that, we're going to hit every single spiritual gift. And yeah, Chick-fil-A might be a spiritual gift. I saw that laugh there. That's what you thought. We're gonna make it going. I'm just gonna wait on mine to learn. No, we need to learn everyone's spiritual gift. That also helps us be able to understand what other people are doing and how they see things. You see the world through your spiritual gift often. My dad uses an illustration of how you react to if someone came in here with an armful of food and their shoe was untied and they tripped and fell and dropped the food. How you react to that situation is going to often reveal your spiritual gift.
Go help them.
And that's a spiritual gift of mercy. Immediately, I want to help, of service, of helps. You might have the spiritual gift of administration. Of you see that and you start going, hey, you go grab a mop, you go grab this. The person with the spiritual gift of prophecy might immediately think, well, they shouldn't have been carrying that much. They should have came in and asked for help. The person gift of exhortation is going to encourage the person to make sure to ask for help next time. The person with the spiritual gift of teaching is going to explain why that happened. Whatever it may be, how your spiritual gift is going to tell you how to see situations. Knowing that that's what people are doing can create peace in the body. You might have seen something of you be going, with my spiritual gift of prophecy and exhortation, you may be going, Klayton's being way too harsh on someone. And you need to stop and go, okay, his spiritual gifting is actually doing this, and he's doing something out of love. And so I understand what he's doing. I can come in and try and accomplish the same thing through my spiritual gift, because we're a team that way. And so we want to know each other's spiritual gifts. All right. That makes sense? Any questions on these? Good. All right. Let's now talk about the problem of spiritual gifts. There are 4 things that happen with the problem we have with our spiritual gifts. The first is there are some that don't know we have a gift. Some of you may have come in and you've never even heard someone talk about spiritual gifts before. You've never heard anyone say you have a spiritual gift. You may be going, I have no clue what that is. And the point of this series is to start with going, really, you have a spiritual gift. Now, the second thing is, you might know that you have a spiritual gift, you just don't know what it is. A ton of people live in that world of they've never had the opportunity to find out what their spiritual gift is. And we want to spend time doing that, and we want to recognize that in each other, and we want to encourage each other in those things. Then the next problem is we know we have a spiritual gift, we know what that spiritual gift is, but we don't know how to use it. You might find the person who has the gift of prophecy always is just really harsh with people. She hasn't learned how to use the spiritual gift with grace and kindness. The person with mercy, they're always trying to immediately go, no, restore immediately. It's like, no, there needs to be a process. The person with mercy needs to learn how to use their spiritual gift. And so the problem is, you might know what your spiritual gift is, you just don't know how to use your spiritual gift. And then the last problem is, you know that you have a spiritual gift, you know what it is, you know how to use it, and you just don't use it. A lot of Christians fall into this category. A lot of Christians fall into this category practically just because they haven't decided to go and learn what it is. They just didn't care enough to. These problems occur when we fail to recognize that as a church, it's all of us together. In talking during the What is a Church series, I emphasized so much the church is the gathering of believers coming together. It's the people. In that, we need our spiritual gifts because all of us need to be functioning. You can't, if a baseball team just put a pitcher onto the mound, it does not matter how good that pitcher is. He will lose the game. He cannot win. If you just put out any other player, or just a few, you just have an outfield, a pitcher and a catcher, you're going to lose. If you just have an infield, you're going to lose. You need all of them. In a church, we need all of us working together out of our spiritual gift, working together as a body to reach the lost and disciple them. And our spiritual gifts is what leads us to be able to do that. That's the gifting and how we're going to be the most effective. With that, I'd add actually a fifth problem. The fifth problem is pastors don't recognize that they need to be helping people live in their spiritual gift. So, I can very easily want to make someone whose gift is mercy become the gift of service. These are closely related gifts, but they're different. And someone mercy, they're more concerned about the emotional well-being of someone, whereas the person with the gift of service, the gift of helps, is going to be a little bit more towards the physical, those kind of things. And so pastor can see that and can just go, well, I'm going to try and get you to work in this, and it might not be the spiritual gift. They might not be effective in that. I might try and move someone who is gifted in teaching and go, okay, well, you should be preaching, and then put them in a place where they're not gifted to exhort. That's not where their gifting's at. A pastor can fail very quickly by not recognizing that people need to be thriving in their spiritual gift. Now, going back to what I said before, we're still called to do the other things. You might not have the spiritual gift of teaching, but if you're able to teach and we need someone, we might need you to work outside your spiritual gift. But my job as pastor is actually to help to make sure that you're thriving in your spiritual gift. And that is, if you're going outside of your gift to serve, I want to also make sure you have a place where you can serve in your spiritual gift. And what that does is it makes it to where it's a lot easier together. It's like trying to lift a piano. If we had a grand piano and I just try to lift it by myself, it'd be really difficult. But when all of us come together, we can lift it very well, but we still need placement in who's doing what lifting. People who are a little bit stronger probably need to be at the heavier end of the piano still, whereas those who are weaker, they can still help. You have a lot of people lifting a grand piano, you can actually lift it pretty easily. But you still need to make sure everyone's in the right place so you can do so effectively. And so those are some of the problems with spiritual gifts that we find is we see that people, we don't know that we even have spiritual gifts, we don't know what ours is, we don't know how to use it, we don't use it, or we have leadership and someone who's supposed to shepherd you and using them, not helping you do so. And so our goal throughout this study is going to be, how do we come about to a place where we can successfully find our spiritual gift, find out how we're to use it, and find where in Range Hills we can use our spiritual gift. And when we do that, we're going to be thriving for the kingdom and thriving for the good of Christ. Now, our flesh on that is going to pull back. The excuse of not knowing our spiritual gift can often be, well, I don't have to serve because I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm doing with it, so I'm going to pull back and not. No, we learn them because we should want to serve and grow, and that should just be our hearts as Christians. We should constantly be wanting to serve and love people and grow together and help each other recognize their spiritual gifts. So that's kind of the introduction to spiritual gifts. We're going to really dive in over the next 7 gifts, about 2 months. We'll be doing this for about 2 months and really be trying to help each other grow in our spiritual gifts. So, any questions?